Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Odie. I'm an alcoholic. I am just moved. My wife calls me a weeping willow, and she's not wrong. I got moved. My soul's been shooken all weekend, and as the day progressed and the time was getting closer to be here with each and every one of you on this part of the room, God just kept cracking me open more. So I'm just really honored to be here. And I want to thank John for inviting me and thank the committee for allowing me to participate in my own recovery today. And thank you to all the humble hands that do all the work in behind the scenes so that we can all be here this weekend together and bring back that love in service and in-person conferences that we've missed for quite some time. I became surrendered, hopefully for the last time, in separation from alcohol on June 13th, 2009. And the reason why I say I became surrendered, because I learned through you people over my time here coming to meetings and listening to what you had to share and watched how you lived what you shared. I realized that sobriety for me is one day at a time. And so that's why I call it my day to surrender. I still can surrender on a daily basis in many areas of my life. Some days I choose not to, and then, prices are paid for it. But that's just the way it is, right? And I'm really grateful for that date. And what I've learned here is that I need to protect that date at all costs. That has to become the most important date in my life. And then the next thing that has to become the most important thing in my life is a relationship with God. If I put you or anything else in front of God, I lose you and I lose God. And I've done it in sobriety, and it's a very painful place to be. I have a sponsor. She doesn't like to be called a sponsor. She's my fellow traveler. She prefers that language. She's a spiritual mentor to me. And I watch how her feet move in this program, and I watch the service that she gives out to each and everyone who crosses her path. And that's the type of sobriety, that's the type of recovery that I want, and that's the type of recovery I try to live to the best of my ability every day. I belong to the 11-step meditation group, and we are exactly what our group says. We are an 11-step meditation. We focus on the 11th step, and part of our meeting includes meditating in silence together as a group. And it's an amazing experience when I'm open to receive it. When I'm not open to receive it, it's just a meditation. And then my head will say, well, I got nothing out of that. Well, were you open to it? Probably not. And that's just been my experience. But I love the group. I had the pleasure and honor to be a part of the start of this group. We just celebrated 4 years in February. And our anniversary is real easy to remember because it's on Super Bowl Sunday. So it doesn't matter about the date. It's just the Super Bowl Sunday. It's just the easy way for us to remember. And I'm really grateful for that group. And I was grateful for the opportunity to help get that meeting off the ground. And it's located in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Because when I moved back to where I currently live now, almost 5 years ago, I was looking for a meditation style meeting because I had been introduced to one in Hamilton, Ontario, through a series of events of my stepfather's passing and running to the arms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got to introduce to the Agape group in Hamilton, Ontario. And those people that were at that meeting in that time of my life picked me up every time I felt like I was falling down. And I just love the experiences that I got. So I brought that concept to Belleville, where I was living for 8.5 years of my recovery at that time. And I started a meeting there following that same concept. And then when I moved back home to where I am now, I wanted another meditation meeting. And I had already decided that if there wasn't one to be found, then I was going to create one. And then I heard there was one being started, so I stalked and I hunted that woman down. I was at meetings, raising my hand. Does anybody know who's starting that meditation meeting? How do I find that person? And then I finally found her and I chased her through a meeting. She's like, can you just wait a minute? I just want to do something. I'm like, yeah, okay. But that's just how passionate I am about Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how passionate I am about recovery. because my life depends upon it. You know, and you taught me that the only way I get to keep this deal is if I give it away. I was told that in 1994, the first time I got introduced to recovery, and I argued with the counselor about it. And I said, I'm not giving nothing away, because then I have nothing left. And she just smiled and shook her head. But I get today what she was trying to tell me then. So I was born and raised in the Crystal Beach, Ontario area, which is south of here. It's in the Niagara Falls area, right on Lake Erie. And I lived there till I was probably in my early 20s before I moved away. But in that process of living there, you know, as a child, there was things that happened to me that shouldn't have happened to me as a child. So I took that and I buried it. And the only time it would come out, it would be displaced in fits of rage and anger. So the abuse I was enduring, I was displacing it and doing the same back to my brother, my younger brother. Not the same style of abuse, but there was still abuse happening because I didn't know what else to do with it. And when I was 11 years old, I finally broke the silence because I couldn't take it anymore. And then I spent the rest of the next 31 years probably of my life carrying and replaying those tapes over and over in my head. It didn't matter how many counselors I talked to. It didn't matter who I spoke to. Nothing was healing, and those tapes just played over and over in my head. So, you know, I hear in the rooms of AA that we come in here and, you know, we think we're different, or we got these two things, and, you know, the sexual abuse was one of my two things, and then the other thing that I struggled with for a long time in my life was my sexuality. Because I grew up in an era where when people were coming out with their sexuality, it was frowned upon. People were being bullied. And instead of coming out and being proud of who I am and standing in my truth, I just retreated farther and farther away from myself. And, you know, and it was a very lonely place to live because I had to start wearing all these masks because I had to be who I thought you wanted me to be. So by the time I'm 14 years old, I'm actively drinking and I'm in love. I don't know about the rest of you. I love the effect of alcohol that it produces. And that was the first love of my life. I was in love. Like, when I really look back on it, the more I do the work and the more I look back on it, it was just this beautiful love affair. So I thought, right? They say it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Absolutely. It had me hook, line, and sinker. Because I felt better when I drank it. I didn't care about anything when I drank it. It allowed me to want to hang out with sordid people. They were my favorite. You know, and it's just those things. And so it was, you know, you hear it said many times, it was a solution to everything that was wrong inside of me. You know, I used to think that I was an alcoholic because of the things that happened to me and because I was afraid to come out with my sexuality, but that is not true. I'm an alcoholic because every time I put a drink in my mouth, I become thirstier and I want more and I want more and I can't stop. You know, and so this relationship, this love affair relationship that I had with the bottle, which I still like to drink from today, you know, it promised me things because I would feel better. You know, I'd come off a hard day of work, which wasn't really that hard, but my mind told me it was a hard day of work. And, you know, and I would get closer to the bar and I would already start to feel better. And then I would walk in and, you know, my drink would be put down. And as soon as I took that first sip, it was just like the day didn't even matter anymore. Everything changed and everything's okay. And I loosen up and all of those good things. And, you know, so why wouldn't I continue to turn to that? Because it made me feel like in a way that I couldn't do on my own. And then one day, and I don't know the day, you guys talk about this invisible line. You know, there's many ways to term it, whatever, but all I can tell you is there just became a point in time in my life where it turned on me, and it turned on me a way where it started to demand things of me. It demanded my time. It demanded my attention. It demanded that I hurt people in front of me because my head told me they're in between you and the next drink. So I would hurt those people just on purpose so I could go where I needed to go. And then the shame that would come behind that and the guilt that I would feel. Because these are just people who genuinely love and care about me. And I'm rolling over them like a bulldozer because I need to have what I need to have because the disease insists that I have to have it. You know, and you get to that place where you just don't want to anymore, and then you can't. You know, it talks about the inability to stop, right? I was that way. You know, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. In 1994, you know, as you know, just the way my life continued to progress, I got to a point in my life where I was out one night and I was doing what I do, and I was with a friend of mine who doesn't do what I do. And she was bearing her heart and soul out to me. And I was so selfish and self-centered. Everything that she was saying, I thought it was all about me. And I said some things to her. And she said, "You are one sick, twisted person." Because I had the audacity to ask this woman if she would be willing to commit suicide with me. Because I had it in my head for a long time that I needed to commit suicide. I needed to not be here anymore. But I had to bring someone with me. And through this conversation, I'm under the influence. She's not. That's what I heard. She's the one. Ask her to come with you. You know, and as a result of that evening, some phone calls were made. And the next day I found myself on the 3rd floor of the Belleville General Hospital. And through a series of conversations with the psychiatrist and other people that they put in my path, it was determined by them that perhaps maybe I have a problem with alcohol and other things that affect me from the neck up. I just want to give you a little backstory about how I lived most of my life, and sometimes in sobriety it's very tempting to continue to live that way as I don't like to make decisions. So I'd rather you make the decision for me. And then this way, if it does go wrong, I don't have to be accountable because I'll make you accountable because you said I should do that. You know, so in 1994, my first introduction, I see this counselor. She recommends that perhaps I should go to treatment. So I say, okay, because it's her idea. Sounds like a good idea to me. So off I went to Destiny Manor in Whitby, Ontario. It was a 12-step program at the time. My counselor was actively living the steps of recovery. She's the one who said I can only keep what I have by giving it away. She's the one I yelled at and said I'm not giving anything away. And you know, I left there. That when you read the 12 and 12 and the 12 step, it talks about being a 2-stepper, right? We do step 1 and we do step 12. Well, I left there a 3-stepper. I left with a medallion that I graduated. I left with this invisible cape on because I was going to go out and save the world. Because I knew everything now. 28 days, I got this thing. And so I go out. Yeah, no problem. I know I'm powerless. Yep, got it. And then I started running around telling everybody I was sorry. I didn't know what I was sorry for, but I was sorry, right? And then you have a problem, come with me. I can help you. So what that did for me is that set in motion for the next 2 years of my life. I started to flounder in and out of the rooms of recovery. And I call that the revolving recovery door phase of my journey. I was coming in through the outdoor. I'd be in there and I might get 30, 60 days and then I'd go back out. And then I might stay a little longer and go back out. Or I might stay a little less and go back out. But that's what those 2 years of my life looked like. And then one night, a really bad night happened in Victoria, British Columbia. I was out there visiting friends at university. It was a Friday. I used to say we all started drinking during the day. That's a lie. I started drinking during the day. And the friends I was visiting decided that we should go downtown Victoria and go bar hopping. I thought that sounds like a great idea. So we take this city bus, because they live somewhere near the University of Victoria. And we go downtown, and as we're walking and getting closer to these bars, I see some sordid people doing some sordid things in a van, and I thought, I sort of want to hang out with you. And so I remembered where they were and who they were. We get to the bar. There's a line up to get in. I'm at the end of the line. All my friends are in front of me. They all get admitted, and I get denied because I'm too intoxicated. My first thought wasn't to argue with the man. My first thought was, those people in the van. And off I went. So here I am mixed up with a bunch of strangers. We end up in some high-rise hotel. And all I know is it's about probably 3 or 4 in the morning. And there just came this point where one of us was going to die. And it was either going to be me or one of them. And I just had that moment of grace, I guess, where I decided I didn't want to stay here to find out who. So I left. And what happened was I had no idea where I was. I had no idea where my friends lived. I didn't know the address. And back then there was no cell phones. It was pay phones. And so I would find an open 24-hour store, and I would ask them, how do I get to the University of Victoria? Because I knew they lived somewhere near there. I was thinking I would recognize the house when I walked by. And so I just continued my journey walking. They just said, you've got a long walk ahead of you. I'm like, that's okay. And every time I hit a payphone, I would call. And eventually, the wee hours of the morning, somebody finally answered the phone, and they came and got me. And so I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm never going to do this again. And I don't know about you, but never happens a lot in my life. I said I would never move back home. Where am I now? I'm back home. I said I was never going to do that again. Anyways, so what happened there was I meant it. I really did. And I heard it shared this morning about just don't drink and go to meetings. And that's what I did for the next year. I just didn't drink and I went to meetings. So I tried that type of recovery. And I'll tell you what it did for me. It just allowed my ego to get bigger. It allowed it to construct itself in a way that it thought it knew everything. I was a day counter. I counted how many days. I hadn't picked anything up. I was looking at the quantity and not the quality. So I would go to I went to meetings 7 days a week for a whole year. So I hung out with the people before the meeting, I hung out with the people at the meeting, and then I hung out with the same people after the meeting. I went through 3 sponsors in 1 year. Not once did I put pen to paper. Anytime there was a suggestion that maybe I should do a little work, they were no longer welcome as my sponsor. And all I did is I read the literature, and then I repeated it in meetings. I wasn't applying it to my life. I didn't even know what half of it meant. It sounded good, though, and so here I am getting closer to my 1 year, and I'm all that, right? And then I've got the best speaker coming to speak, and I've got the best people doing the readings, and it was just like, whew. So in October of 1997, I got that 1-year medallion. And then in November of 1997, I had a conversation with a type 2 drinker. Very dangerous person for me to hang out with and to be associating with. And all it took was for her to say, I don't think you were really that bad, Odie. And I was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. And isn't it funny, I live in denial for so long that I'm powerless over alcohol, that I'm an alcoholic. I defend that bottle, I defend that relationship, and I'm in denial that I'm anything like that. And then as soon as I realize I'm screwed and I am like that, I spent the next however many times trying to be a type 2 drinker, right? I used to try and outdrink the hard drinker, And then now that I'm an alcoholic, now I desperately want to just be a hard drinker. Because I didn't want to stop and I didn't want to moderate. I just wanted to be a hard drinker because I saw my friends doing it. And they were still having lives and they were having all of these things. So there's a lot of energy spent. So, my friend and I had this conversation and yeah, you were right. So I picked up a drink. And that drink lasted for 12 years. And at the end of those 12 years, I found myself alone. And I had been alone for a long time before I really found myself alone. I was in a tent by this time because the disease I suffer from, the illness I suffer from, demanded that I walk away from everything. And I had burnt all my bridges. I had one bridge left. My good friend, who was another hard drinker, she offered me to come and stay at her house. But she had 2 conditions: that I wasn't allowed to drink and I wasn't allowed to do anything else that I like to do. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't fulfill that. So I turned it down. And so the next place left for me to go was on my own in a tent, and that's what I did. I wasn't there for very long, but it felt like a lifetime because I was stuck with me. In the last 2 years of me being out there, my life looked like this. It was Groundhog Day over and over for 2 years, the last 2 years of being out there. I would wake up, say, I'm not going to do that again. And then 5 minutes after I said I wasn't going to do what I was going to do, I was doing what I said I wasn't going to do. JJ talked about it earlier this morning in his talk about the liar in my head. I got a whole committee of liars up there. And they're all trying to speak over each other and they all want the same result. They want me insane and they want me dead. That's it. So, here I am and I'm stuck with me and I'm doing this thing 20 hours a day, and then I'd pass out for 4 and I'd wake up and say, I'm not doing that again. And then within 5 minutes, my head says, oh, but you got to do this, this, and this, and what about that? And then there I am, because I have no control. I am powerless. I have no ability to stay away from it, even when I earnestly want to. This illness demanded that I picked it back up no matter what. It reminded me every day, you agreed that we were in love. This is our relationship. I'll tell you when it's over. You don't decide when it's over. So I felt like in the end, I felt like a rag doll. And this illness just picked me up, shook me up, and just dragged me anywhere and everywhere. It felt like it. So on June 12th of 2009, it was one of those mornings where I woke up after my little nap. And there was just this little part of me that really just wanted to be done. So I'm going to just let you know, while I was in this tent for this little while, every day, all day long, I would hear. And it was so annoying. And I was like, will you just shut up? I got the voices in my head, and then I got that going on, right? I have God's creation outside singing me melodies and lullabies, and I am not having it, and I am not happy. And on this morning, and I swear they were doing it all night too. And, and so on this morning, the whistling starts and the battle in my head begins again. I wake up and I don't want to do this again, but I don't know how not to do this again. And there's this little voice that continued to whisper and said, you know where you can go. You've been there before. And then the committee would be like, shut up, right? But what happened was I went through the battle in my mind again, because that's where the disease centers for me, is in my mind. It only becomes a physical illness when I actually take that first drink and then the allergy is set off. But when I'm not drinking and I'm not having anything else to treat my mind, I go insane, and then, of course, I need to pick up a drink in order to treat it. And so I was on a waiting list for psychiatric care, and I was to see these people on July 7th and in Ottawa, the Royal Ottawa Hospital, because I was in Kemptville at this campground at the time, and I had an appointment in Ottawa. And I just knew that morning that I wasn't going to make it. So I called the Royal Ottawa Hospital, and I was begging the lady to please let me come. Is there not, like, can you bump me off the waiting list? Like, I'm in crisis here. Like, I am not going to live. I don't got much more time. And, her answer to me was, I'm sorry, you're on the waiting list and you have to stay there. And I said, well, where else can I go? So those were my words to her. And she said to me, you can try detox, but good luck, because they never have any beds. And I just thought, okay, thank you. And so I hung up the phone with her. I passed back out. I woke up and I thought about our conversation. And I just decided I wasn't worth it. And I decided I'm just going to continue living the way I'd been living. So I started walking. And as I was walking, I believe God put me in the pause. There's many things I believe that happen in the pause. It talks about it in our book. We pause when we're this, we pause when we're that. And I believe God paused me in that moment for me to just be still for even 5 seconds. And as that pause happened, I happened to put my hand in my pocket, and I realized my cell phone was with me. And it was a flip phone back at that time for me. I missed that phone. And I just stopped, and it was like, what are the chances? So I called this detox number. And this is where I see today what God was doing for me, what I was really not able to do for myself. And when I got through to detox, they told me they had a bed. And that lady on the other place told me they probably wouldn't. So I said, can I please have that bed? And she said, you have to be here at such and such a time. And so I'm in Kemptville, they're in downtown Ottawa. It's quite a hike to get there. I still had a car at the time. And I just got this sense of willingness that came over me after I hung up the phone. I said, I'll be there. I'll do whatever it takes. And so I frantically got everything together that I had with me, and I made my way down to downtown Ottawa, and I knocked on those doors of detox. And the lady greeted me and said, come on in. And I said to her, I need long-term treatment. I've been to treatment twice before this. They've been short-term. It doesn't work for me because I seem to know what works for me, right? And I said, I need long-term treatment. I'll do whatever it takes. She said, honey, just come in here. Just get in here. Don't worry about that right now. You're safe. I said, well, how long can I stay? She said, you can stay as long as you want. And that's all I needed to hear, just to know that I was safe and that everything was going to be okay. So I entered into the detox on a Friday. I woke up Saturday morning, completely surrendered, because I was still under the influence when I showed up at detox, and that's why my date of surrender is June 13th. And ironically, I didn't realize it at the time, but that's also the birthday of my oldest nephew, and my oldest nephew is currently serving time in penitentiary right now, because he suffers from this disease too. God lined that up for whatever reason. I'm still waiting to see the end of that story. And so they give me these pamphlets for recovery and treatment homes, and the one I called, and they were on a retreat, and this, I believe, was God doing for me again. God, my wife's sponsor says God's either going to bless it or block it. And I believe God blessed me again, because God blocked this one treatment center. So I called the other one on the Monday, and the lady answered, and she said, can you call me back in 10 minutes? So I'm thinking, oh, now they're testing me. So I'm like, yes, that's fine. So I watched the clock, and right on 10 minutes, I called her back. I said, hi, it's me again. And she said, yeah. She said, are you able to come in and meet with us? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm at detox. She goes, well, go ask them. So I did. And I said, is it okay if I leave and go have this interview at this treatment center? But I need to come back. And they said, yeah, you can go. I said, are you sure, though? Because I need to come back. Like, I'm not going to walk out that door and then you give my bed away. And they said, no, honey, it's okay. You go, but you'll have to go through the process again. I said, I don't care about that. I just want to know that I'm going to have my bed. And she said, yeah. So I went and I met with this lady and we had a great talk. And she said, I think you seem to be a really good fit for our program. You know, there's a few issues, you know, your suicide stuff and your self-harming. But you know what? If you're willing to sign a contract on those things, we'd be love to have you. I'm like, perfect. I'm in. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to go back to where, to go back where I just came from. And where I came from, even though I'm not talking about the tent people, I'm talking about where I came from emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, that I didn't want to be here anymore. I was so empty inside. I felt so dense that you couldn't get an echo out of me, even if you tried. That's how I felt. That's the only way I know how to articulate it. I don't know any other way to articulate it. Because sometimes feelings are really hard to articulate. Just like trying to articulate what God feels like. I know what God feels like for me. It's like he takes this beautiful tiny paintbrush and he just gently strokes on the inside of my heart. That's what it feels like. And so she says to me, you know, you're a fit for this program. I'm like, great. And she said, but I got some bad news. And I said, what's that? She said, we have a waiting list. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. She said, no, you're looking at weeks to months before you'll find a bed here. And I just looked at her, and I don't know, it didn't seem to bother me. And I said, that's okay. Detox said I could stay as long as I want. And off I went back to detox. I got back in, I checked myself back in. An hour later, they said, Odie, there's a phone call for you. I went to the phone and it was Empathy House. And the lady said, we have a bed for you right now. I was like, seriously? And she's like, yeah, I have some Empathy House alumni here. I was just dumbfounded. I said, I thought it was going to be weeks or months. And she said, no, we have a bed available now. And I was like, when can I come? She goes, when do you want to come? I said, when can I come? And she said, our admission dates, this is on a Tuesday. So I went into detox on a Friday. That Tuesday, I'm being offered a bed in a treatment facility for a minimum of 3 months of my life, up to a year of my life, if I choose to take it all. And I said, when can I come? And she said, we admit on Wednesdays and we admit on Saturdays. And I'm going to tell you, if I wasn't serious about really wanting what recovery can do for me and being willing to do whatever it takes, I would have said, I'll see you Saturday. I would have bought some more time out in society. But I didn't. I said, I'll be there tomorrow. What time? And so I show up at this facility. I sign up for the 3-month package because I, don't want to get too serious. And, and a month and a half into this deal, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I can't leave here in a month and a half from now. I'm not going to make it. So I went into my counselor. I said, I can't leave in a month and a half. I said, like you take a Powerade or a Gatorade bottle and you got the liquid in it and then you've got the wrapper and then you take the wrapper off, then you got to lift the lid and then you got to get that other stupid thing off in the middle that blocks you from getting it. I said, I haven't even got the wrapper off. If this is my life and my emotions, I need more time. And she said, Odie, you can stay as long as you want, up to 1 year. You're the one who wanted 3 months. So then I was like, okay. So I ended up staying for 6 months. And in those 6 months, I was able to be safe, be still. I was able to do the work that they asked of me inside that facility, which included feelings group and assertiveness training, all those things that I was lacking in, learning how to be responsible, learning how to be accountable, showing up when I said I was going to show up. And then we were required to go outside and go to meetings. And when I would come to meetings, I came with the cotton in my mouth and my ears wide open and my eyes open even wider, because not only did I want to hear what you had to say, I wanted to see what you were doing. Because back in those other times when I was in the rooms, my mouth was too busy yapping, like Butch said this morning, when you're in a bar or sometimes in an AA meeting, everybody's talking, no one's listening. Right? And I didn't want to be that person. And I also felt, too, for the first while when I would go to these meetings outside of the recovery home, was because I'd spent all day talking and sharing and doing whatever I was asked to do there. And then I needed to go and listen. And as a result of that, I was introduced to a woman who became my temporary sponsor. And you know what she did for me? She introduced me to God. And she did it in a way that I looked at my own experiences in my life to prove that there was an existence of God. She didn't sit down and say, this is what I did and this is what happened to me. She said, Odie, I want you to go back to that treatment center and I want you to get a pen and paper out and I want you to think about 10 times when things in your life happened for the better, for the good, and you had no hand in it. The couple right there, detox bed open when the lady said it wouldn't open. Empathy house giving me a bed sooner than I thought I was going to get. Those were prime examples of God already working in my life, and that just helped me believe, and it just kept me wanting to continue to seek. You know, it says, like Jay Albee talked about it yesterday. Sorry, Jay, if I broke your last name there. You know, he said, you know, God doesn't make too hard terms for those who seek Him, right? When I stop seeking, hard terms come down on me quick. So if I'm continuing to seek, but you know where the best place I find God is in you. I really find God in you if I'm not out in nature. So that whistle that drove me nuts, I was in treatment and I had a feelings group one morning and I was feeling my feelings. And I just basically just vomited all my feelings out on the table. And you know how you know when you've emptied yourself and that you get that feeling? That's what happened. And right after I did that, everything was quiet and I heard. And I was like, what? And I'm you know, and then it did it again. And I'm like, did you guys hear that? And they're like, what? I'm like, listen. And then it did it again. I said, that. They said, oh yeah, it's a bird. I said, well, what kind of bird? And they're like, I don't know. And I said, well, I need to find out. So I went seeking because I believe God spoke through me, through those birds to me. So I finally got somebody to look on a computer at a store when I was on free time, and we went through bird sounds. And as soon as I heard that whistle, I started jumping up and down like I won the lottery, because I did win the lottery. I win the lottery every day when I choose to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I choose to be of love and service, I get to win the lottery every day. I feel like the richest person alive, especially when I'm being of service, because that is the oxygen I need to continue to breathe. Although I got to always remember one of the beautiful things that my spiritual mentor says to me, it's okay to be there for others, but don't leave yourself behind. And so she tells me what this bird is. It's a black-hooded chickadee. I have 2 of them tattooed on my arm today. So I went to the Spirit or Nature Talks book, and you know what that bird stands for? It's the bird of truth. God was speaking to me in that tent, telling me, you need to come home. That's the truth. We did a prayer in that room before we came over here today, and some of the words that I heard that John asked God, that the truth be told here today, that there'll be hope and there'll be faith and all those things. And that's what broke me open coming in here, because it's like, yeah, those are all the things. You know, I'm an acronym person. I love the word faith because it's finding acceptance in the heart. And when I take that word faith and I correlate it to more about alcoholism, and it says when we concede to our innermost selves, where am I conceding? In my heart. Not my head, in my heart. I have to surrender in my heart, and I think that's the only reason why the doors of detox opened for me when they did, and that treatment bed opened for me then, because I surrendered within here. I didn't surrender up here, I surrendered within here. This place will take forever to surrender. You know? So I got to live it from here. And it's an inside-out journey. I don't know how much time I have left.
You got 10 minutes.
10 minutes, wow. Well, I ain't going to be filling that. But it's, you know, it's true. Like in the Gap, right? Like when I see somebody with a Gap T-shirt on, you know, my sponsor, I don't care. I'm going to call you my sponsor. I'll get a sponsor spanking later. Which is a good thing. It just means she loves me enough to tell me the truth. But, you know, the word Gap, God awaits patiently. You know, at our home group, in our format, we share organically. So we don't go around, I don't believe in circular sharing, because I believe it takes you out of the moment that you're in, because well, it takes me out of the moment. I don't know about you, but it takes me out. I got to keep it about me. It takes me out of the moment. You know why? Because I'm too busy thinking about what I need to say. Because my turn's coming. I let God decide when I'm supposed to share and when I'm supposed to be quiet. And so in our format, it talks about that. We say, in the gaps in between shares, we will continue to observe silence. And what I love is those people who cannot handle silence, they want to share. And it's like, and I'll sit there quietly. I love silence. That's my favorite sound anymore. It really is. I see a lady here and she's shaking her head and smiling at me. I went to a retreat that she was facilitating, and she introduced me to an amazing 11-step meditation on YouTube. And I still listen to it today, Kathy, so thank you for that. And to me, it is the most beautiful tapestry of the big book. I love that meditation so much, Kathy. You know what I did? Is I sat down and I wrote it all out. I would put it on pause. I wrote it out, and then I went through my big book, and I found it, and I put page numbers, and I highlighted it in one of my big books. I have more than one book. And what a beautiful piece of work. Whoever the divine worked through that person, what a piece of work. And I love it. And I share it with people. If they want a copy of it, I send it to them and tell them, now listen to it and read it. And I put the page number where to find it, and it's amazing. Like, just whoever did that, it's just like, yeah, thank you. Thank you, God, for that. Anyways, so I know earlier I said to you that when I got into Empathy House, I had told them that I went to treatment 2 times prior to that short-term treatment, and I did. I haven't told you about the second time I went to treatment. I went to treatment in September of 1998. I didn't go there to get sober. I went there to hide, because I told you earlier I like sordid people, and another bad event happened and someone tried to murder me, and I really just didn't know what to do with my life. And I thought, I know where I can go. I can go to treatment, because they can't tell anybody that you're there. So I went there to hide. I didn't go there to get sober. And my actions and the events so I went back to the same facility, Destiny Manor. By this time, it's a 21-day program. It's a holistic program. It's no longer a 12-step based program. And I had to go to detox before I was allowed to go there. Here's a sign that I probably wasn't ready, because I had a going away party for myself the night before. And I was violently sick. My friend's driving me to detox, and I'm puking in a bag while he's driving me to detox. And I get to this facility, and I figure I just need some time to get away, be safe, and figure out my next move in life. And so while I was at this facility this time in their program, it required we put a lot of pen to paper. It was called journaling. And we had to put 3 things we were grateful for at the end of every day. And it was very therapeutic, but I didn't realize it at the time. So again, I believe this is God working through me. I believe God was the hand, and I just held the instrument for the instrument to move on this piece of paper. And I ended up penning a prose. It's called Bus Rider, because back in the 90s, I think we still hear it here too, but people say, who's driving your bus? And I just really dislike that. I'll show you who's driving the bus, and just that's my attitude. That's the committee in my head. Those words didn't always come out of my mouth. But in 2012, I was 3 years sober, and I was emptying a box because I moved a lot. And it got to the point where, if you move a lot, you just keep moving the boxes with you, but you never really open them to see what's in there. You just figure there's got to be something in there worthwhile, so I'll just keep it. And again, I believe this is all divine intervention. And I opened this box. I had just moved into this place on my own, because I always lived with other people, whether it was a partnership, whether it was friends, parents, whatever. And I finally at 3 years sobriety, I just, through a series of events, I was handed some speaker CDs from people out in the Los Angeles area, and it just blew my mind. I was like, what? What? I'm like, I need this. Like, I was wearing blinders I didn't even know I had on, and that just put my feet in a new direction to want to continue to seek in a more desperate way, in a different way. So I'm unpacking this box, and my journal's in there from 1998, and we're in 2012. And I was like, wow, I still have this. So I start looking through it because I want to see what was I like then. And I come across this thing called Bus Rider, and I read it, and I was like, what? So I'm going to share it with you. I think it sums up 1, 2, and 3. It just sums up my journey. I could have just said that and sat down, and you all could have just went to another meeting. So I'm going to share it with you. And if it changes your life or wants you to change your life, then God's doing what God needs to do. I know every time that I think about it, I get moved by it, and I share it a lot when I'm asked to share from the podium. And it just reminds me of how far Alcoholics Anonymous and God has brought me. A long time ago, I met me some friends. Said, hop on the bus to where happiness ends. You don't need a ticket. You pay with your soul. Gonna party with misery down in the black hole. It started out fun until misery arrived. A 3-headed dragon with death in its eyes. Denial then plagued me, motivated by fear. I stayed on the bus until the next stop appeared. I hopped the next bus with the keys in my hand. It was my turn to drive into insanity land. I drove round in circles and got lost on the way, hopeless and desperate, till I heard someone say, come now, my child, and let me drive the bus and clear your soul now of the storms and the dust. The road you had traveled, never straight, always stoned, has left your bus empty. Let me take you home. The people you find there know just where you've been. And if you want what they have, then surrender to win. So as the doors open, then so did my eyes. The steps off the bus led up to the skies. I turned to the driver with confusion on my face. He said, they are numbered. It's freedom, not a race. So take one at a time slowly, and then you will see the way that your life was always meant to be. Thank you for my sobriety.
That was awesome, Odie. Thank you so much. I mean,